Hi, everyone, and welcome to SideQuest 24 of High Scores, High Stakes, the podcast that usually starts with a joke, but tonight is no joke. I'm your host, as always, Mr. Luvva Luvva, and with me is not my co-host, but my co-hosts.
Oh, the doubles, the multiples, the plurals. Hello, I'm Cardinal Smith, and how you doing, Luvva? What is cooking?
Very little, mate, because it's very late at night. I think Mrs. Luvva would kill me if I started cooking this time.
Fair enough. Who's that laughing? Who's
It's
with us?
Tomahawk. Cardinal Smith, you can't sit there, have your victory parade, disappear for 2 weeks, and then pretend like nothing's happened here. Can we?
I think the audience deserves an explanation of why Cardinal Smith has disappeared after winning this cup. He's been celebrating so hard. His open top bus parade has broken down in the middle of nowhere, and he's had to wander through the wilderness, the
That's-
Northern Irish wilderness, and he's just made it home today.
I've just made it back. I've been celebrating my season 1 cup and my DNF from season 3, episode 1 cup, and I'm just waiting on the next trophy in the post.
I'm not gonna lie,
It's incredible.
I should order that.
Let him sweat on it. Let him sweat on it.
Oh,
before I actually turn.
we have a few admin tasks to do here at the podcast.
We have a lot. Yeah, there's a lot going on with the podcast.
Yeah.
And speaking of podcasts, the people right now are going, "What am I listening to?" You're listening to High Scores, High Stakes. High Scores, High Stakes is usually 4 friends. Well, 3 friends.
Oh,
Since
Change that.
I know it's so ingrained that it's 4 friends, but it's 3 friends now. 3 friends who compete with one another in gaming challenges. Every week we pick a game. Every week we play a gaming challenge against one another, and we compete with one another in a league table. The winner of the challenge gets 3 points. Second place gets 2 points. Third place gets 1 point. That's usually how it works in our main season, but our side quests, which is now week 4 of our side quests. Our side quest is where we discuss all things PlayStation, all things gaming. Every week is basically like a brand new podcast. Oh, I'm out of breath there. That was a lot of information.
Take it easy, Laura.
The usual data dump. That's it.
I think it was the way I was sitting or something. I don't know what happened there. Usually I spit this out
Very
like
low key,
Eminem.
relaxed approach today. Yeah, that's it. The one
I
arm
know.
over the stove.
It's the joy of not recording the video, isn't it? You can do things a wee bit differently. lie back in bed and record a podcast or something. Who's gonna know? but yes. Right now there's people going, right, I know what this podcast is. I'm not too sure if I'm enjoying it, but I would like to hear these boys' thoughts and opinions on other things. How can I do that without listening to their annoying voices? Well, my dear listener, if you direct your browser to highscoreshighstakes.com, you can see everything in written form there. The plan for that is whoever is managing that website has fallen behind on matters, all things great and small. But that will be rectified. I do expect a deluge of content to hit there. But other than content, on the top of the page, there are links to everywhere in the internet where you can find us. So there's a link to our Twitch, our Twitter, our Instagram, and everything. Our YouTube as well is there. So if you want to find us all over the internet and follow us for our unique gaming takes, go to highscoreshighstakes.com. And if you've already followed us everywhere and you haven't left a review yet for the podcast, please do that. Give it the star rating you think the podcast deserves. If you've already done that but you haven't left a written review, please do that as well. If you've done all of the above but you haven't told a family member or a friend who you think will like the podcast, that would be greatly appreciated. And with all of the housekeeping out of the way, I would say this is a nice, sharp, professional introduction, but it really hasn't been. It's been dreadful, and I apologize for that. But Cardinal, it has been a few weeks. I know you've beaten Final Fantasy 16, so now I'm wondering, what are you playing?
Well, the world of Clive Rodsfield in Final Fantasy 16 is finished. And I have moved on. Sorry, I have moved on, obviously. By waiting 90 days post-release for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth to finally come down in price, which it did. And now it is mine, and I obtained it digitally and played it digitally via the PlayStation. And it is huge.
Riveting.
It's really big. You think Is it going to recreate the open world aspect of the original? Yes, it's open world, but the world's bigger.
Right.
Why'd they do it? Why not? Why not? And there's loads of things to do around the place, so I haven't got very far in it at all because I've been wandering around doing every single thing that comes up, and that's
Except
my
the
life
main
now.
story. Yeah.
Mm.
When you say open world, right? Is it truly open world or is it segmented? Because my memory of Final Fantasy VII on the PlayStation is big, flat 2D map. You walk around, you have random battles, and then a town would be like this little polygonal, tiny thing where your character was disproportionately larger than. So is it open world like The Witcher, Grand Theft Auto, and stuff like that? Can you walk from one town to the next town, or does it follow that sort of format?
It is. It is no longer flat. I will say that. It is very much any towns or anything are just there in their size and format, and there is no loading screen to go into those places. You just walk in through the gates. You're there. You, it everything is of scale. There is very limited view of a sort of top-down map, and obviously there's limited way paths you can travel to, like, such as to progress. You need to progress the story to make a way through the mountains, or you later obtain a boat or something. You know, you're not going to walk across water, but you're climbing cliffs, you're coming across enemies that you can see. You know, you can run around them, avoid them if you want. Obviously, no random battles, but it's interesting. I
Excellent.
remember
How far?
seeing there's some climbing points where they've highlighted rocks in yellow. They're like painted yellow
Yes.
points where you climb.
Yes.
You have to point the controller to the next yellow painted point as a sort of pathfinder.
That's cool.
But I remember people complaining about that. It's like, why would you do that? Why are these things painted yellow? These rocks, and it's because nobody is ever going to go up to this cliff and like climb it unless it is, you know, pointed out you can do this.
Yeah. It's the internet's favorite complaining point recently of like, I mean, you wouldn't see yellow painted things in the real world. Well, it's not. It's a video game. You fool.
But even if I did, I would engage in it. That's the best part.
I don't see anything wrong with it. They're like, oh, the games are just holding your hand these days. Yeah, that's because they're enormous. They are
Huge.
massive,
It's well
massive
needed.
games. So I've no issue with yellow guiding rails at all in video games, because as you say, if it just looks like a mountain, everyone's going to walk around it. Whereas it goes, they're not going to put a big sign on the grass, for example, climb here, climbable.
No.
So it makes sense. I mean, the only game that might do that would be the Elden Ring or something. That's something Miyazaki would do. Just put a climbable mountain and tell no one about it. And then the only way to find out about it is to go on the internet and Google, what can I climb?
Oh no, Elden Ring would do that stupid thing where they'd leave notes and the player who was there before would just go, beware things. And then that would be it.
I feel a very Baldur's Gate 3 thing, possibly, to just have a completely unmarked. You can miss meeting a main character if you don't look into this bush, kind of thing. Yeah. They don't signpost anything. It's just.
And again, there's nothing wrong with that. If it meets the vision that the developers had, it's totally fine. Not every game needs it. Not every game should have it. But if the developers want to put it in for ease of the player, then so be it. It's their game. That's not yours. You just bought a license, and you don't really own it. If Ubisoft are to be believed, you're borrowing it.
But enough about my obsession with one particular franchise.
Mm-hmm.
What else has been going on?
Yeah, Tomahawk. Save this whole thing. I mean, I think Cardinal Smith's he's talked about nothing but Final Fantasy since about February. So please, what are you playing?
I pre-ordered Final Fantasy 14 Dawn Trail. Hello, everybody.
Oh, you're a psycho.
Dear, oh dear. Tom,
That's it.
please. What are you playing,
Okay.
mate?
I have been doing a bit of research for our next Game of the Month episode. I've been back playing Bloodborne because why the hell not? I Father Gascoigne I just remembered how much he makes me so happy and also gives me eternal misery.
Yep. Yep. He gatekeeps the whole game.
That's it.
Let's
It's
just be honest.
brilliant. Like I haven't put a great amount of time into it. It's purely just to get mechanics and stuff done and dusted. But I did have I set up a new build because I didn't want to do New Game Plus. I accidentally attacked Eileen the Crow because I forgot the control scheme.
Oh, yep. That sounds like a Cardinal Smith thing to
Re-
do.
Restarted, set up a new build.
No
I
comment.
have sent you the picture of the build that I have created. He is the scariest and also the most eligible bachelor in all of Yarnum. So
Yeah, he's a real giga chad, like.
that's exactly.
I feel
that is
demasculated
exactly
just
what
looking
he-
at him.
So I've just been chipping away at that just to kind of get myself prepped for that Game of the Month episode. So that should hopefully be out late this week after release.
Yeah.
Other than that, that's really been about the height of it. Like I just, you get a game, you dip straight back into that game, and you remember why you loved it so much. That's just we've talked about Bloodborne to death on this podcast. So tune in on Friday, hopefully, for the Game of the Month episode.
Yeah, it is. It is a great game. So I think it's my most played game on PlayStation. So I think
I think I'm in this mode where everyone's playing Shadow of the Erd Tree. I'm playing Bloodborne because why not?
the way it should be. The way it should be. It's a far superior game. Let's just be honest.
It's called balance.
Bloodborne
That's what it is.
Well, this week I have been playing very, very, very little. In fact, I don't think my PlayStation's been on this week at all. Nor do I think my Steam Deck has been on this week. In fact, I can tell you right now, my Steam Deck has not been on this week. The only game I have been playing is it was Little Luvva's birthday this week, and we got him an NES console because he's obsessed with Tetris. So I've been playing the odd game of Tetris with him this week, and he is absolutely phenomenal now at Tetris. It's crazy how good he is at it now. Yesterday, in fact, last night he came in to me and he's like, "Daddy, I have sent you an invite to help me with my spreadsheet." And I was like, "All right, okay."
I did see this. Yes, like my email came up was like, "There's been a request for a Google spreadsheet." I'm going, "Sorry, what?"
Yeah. So, for context, Little Love is 9, and he has. I don't know where he's discovered Google spreadsheets, but he has created a Google spreadsheet. He has invited me as a collaborator and an editor of the spreadsheet, and he is compiling all of the ways that he has found that you can crash Tetris on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and he is up to 17 items. 17 items. So that's what I've been playing this week. I've been playing. Oh, what's going on here? I've been getting absolutely annihilated at Tetris. Long story short, that is it. He has been absolutely killing it. He's unbelievable at it now.
Is this like the original? Is this the first Tetris? Like how the communist USSR citizen designed it?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
I was looking at his power supply was too weak for the one that came with it was not strong enough to power. So it was powering it, but the sound wasn't really playing through the TV speakers, and the picture was fuzzy. So I bought him a new power supply, and I bought him like a new cables, for the TV. And obviously, I turned it upside down, and the copyright date on the bottom of his NES is from 1985. So,
wow.
So yeah, it's a 39-year-old console. It's all he asked for. So we got him.
Do you know what? That's it. That's incredible.
But yeah, that's what I've been playing this week. Tetris. Tetris on the NES. And it's good. It is good.
Holds up.
There is a lot of simplicity. There is a lot of simplicity. I didn't think I'd ever see a day again where I was blown inside a cartridge to get a machine to read it. But
You
Pretty
gotta
much
give
every
it that
company.
hock to it.
Yeah. Contemporary reference.
That's it. I've dated the podcast. Now we have officially dated this episode.
Yes. In 10 years' time, people are going, what is Tomahawk going on about? And why was that so funny?
I'm
Look it
still
up.
not sure what Tomahawk's going on about or what any of this stuff is.
I'll tell you when you
Don't
grow
know
up,
how.
Jiddo. Don't worry.
Our group chat has been inundated with all these memes about this thing. Like, I don't know how you've avoided this, but okay. But yes.
Let's still get
Speaking,
into it.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, let's not.
No, let's not open this up. I think we should rein this back into what the topic of
Yeah.
conversation is going to be today. It's a bit of, we've seen this. It's a bit of a downer this week.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What we're discussing tonight, or this episode, is the state of gaming in 2024. We're going to be looking at the business side of gaming, what sort of state it's in, what's been going on, why it's been going on, and if there's any way to fix it. So let's hit that reset button on Cardinal, and let's take a wee break and get into the conversation. Let's go. Okay, so the state of gaming. Before we start talking about 2024, I think it's important that we talk about 2023 and what the state of gaming was going into the new year. Obviously, last year was a classic year. I think 2023 will be in the conversation for the greatest gaming years of all time because the amount of games that came out, I think the average score for games in 2023 was like 86% on Metacritic, 88% on OpenCritic. So that just goes to show you that the quality of games that were coming out in 2023. However, also in 2023, the number of layoffs was an all-time high. So in 2023, 10,500 game developers or people working in the game industry lost their jobs. And I do remember, I think it was Kind of Funny Games in January going, 2023, it's happened, it's bad, but it's over, and it can't get worse.
Ha 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 ha.
But then it did get worse. It got much worse.
Massively worse.
So we'll talk about January. All right, we're not going to break this year down into months. Don't panic. But I think January is a really, really, really important month to talk about because it is absolutely, it was a wild west of people just getting sacked for no reason. So let's just break it down. Okay. So in January, Microsoft, who, to my memory, were allowed to close their acquisition of Activision Blizzard King in January, maybe February. No, it was January. So they closed that $68 billion. Let's not forget that figure. They laid off 1,900 staff. 1,900.
Off the bat.
EA.
Pretty much,
Yeah. That was just to make room. Streamlining our business, I think is how they said it. Trying to claw back some of that 68 billion, I think. EA laid off 780. Embracer laid off 900. They also closed Free Radical Designs, who created Time Splitters, made up of Rare, who worked on GoldenEye, Perfect Dark. Epic Games laid off 830 people. And I think what's important to remember about Epic is that they make Fortnite, and Fortnite in 2023 made 5.5 billion. Ubisoft, Sega, Naughty Dog, Unity all had loads and loads of layoffs. I couldn't find exact numbers for each of them, but it was a lot. So in January this year, 4,410 people lost their jobs in gaming.
Crazy, like absolutely.
It is.
It's weird that we kind of are putting Microsoft Xbox as like the big bad guy here, but it did sort of be broad strokes. It kind of happened across every major publisher as well.
Yeah. I mean, Sony laid off as well. A couple
Sure,
hundred,
they
I think
dropped
it's
it
400.
And they dropped the entire London studio pretty much overnight as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
There's tons of it.
You can paint one person as the big bad guy, but it kind of, it happens everywhere. But I think just when we kind of look at it and go, Microsoft, they spent, what was that? What did we say that the acquisition was? How many billion?
68 billion. 68.
And then they just went, well, actually, it turns out that everything is not profitable now. So let's trim the fat a little bit here.
Yeah. I mean, it also bears to mention that a couple of hundred of those 1,900 would have been high-level executives of Activision, Blizzard, and King, who are no longer required because Microsoft are now their executives as well. So yeah, it's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. But in 1 month, in 2024, you have just shy of half of what was sacked in 2023. Keep in mind, 2023 was the all-time high. I looked into the numbers this sort of year up till point of recording. Um, numbers are hard to find. There's a load of estimates, but the estimates throw it somewhere between 10,000 and 11,500. I think the accepted number that you found, Tom, is 10,800 people. So 10,800 people have been laid off in 2024, which puts it above 2023, and we're in June. We are in June. So the record-breaking year lasted all of 5 months. Over the last couple of weeks, there's a lot more sort of, we're going to be closing studios. We can't afford this. There's a lot of studios merging with one another. There's a lot of studios moving. I have made a list of like the big games development studios that have been closed down in 2024. Now, this isn't all of them. This is just the ones that I would consider to be the biggest ones. So you have Deviation Games, famously made by Sony to make new and wonderful games. They were announced, I think, in E3, probably 20, maybe 21. They have released no games. They are closed. So make of that what you will. Obviously, there's Tango Gameworks, makers of The Evil Within, Hi-Fi Rush, closed. Arcane Austin, makers of Prey, Dishonored, closed. Rule 7, makers of Ollie Ollie World, Ollie Ollie, and Roller Drone, closed. And in fact, so they were owned by Take-Two, and Take-Two called their indie sort of division, private division. All of those studios will be closed down by the end of 2024. And then we have Sony's London studio, makers of some great VR experiences like Truth and Blood. They made the PlayStation VR Worlds. They made the Getaway. Gone. Free Radical Designs, gone. Ubisoft London, gone. Volition Studios, gone. Volition made Red Faction, things like that. All gone. That is not all of them. That's just the ones that I would consider like the
big hitters,
the big,
like the
the big
highlight ones.
hitters.
Yeah.
But it is insane. Every single one of those studios, well, Roll 7 for sure, London Studio for sure, Free Radical, Tango Gameworks have all had really, really high rated games in the last year and a half. I mean, Roll 7 have had in the last 2 years Rollerdrome, which I think is sitting mid 80s on Metacritic, and Ollie Ollie World, which is sitting high 80s, low 90s. Tango Gameworks had Hi-Fi Rush, which is sitting at 87. All of them have had massively popular, massively good games, and their reward for creating these games is closure.
Yeah, close the studio. Yeah, but is it a case of the guys working on it? Are they gonna be relocated elsewhere, or is it a case of that studio's done?
You're
See you
gone.
later. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Yep, pretty much.
It's strange as well because I think it was not long after Hi-Fi Rush and like Sea of Thieves and everything came over from Xbox to PlayStation, and then within like less than a month, they went right. That's it. Tango's gone. So like, it seems weirdly strategic to go. Here's a popular game. We're going to move it cross-platform, and then we're going to bin the studio. I did have a bit of a look into this. They justified the 4 studios closing to open up a new studio to develop a new AAA franchise.
And that's
pretty much all they said. It was like, right, so what's this? And then they were like, oh, it's just going to be genre defining. I'm like, that's not really what trade-off can you, or what confidence can you sort of instill in player base that some beloved franchises are never going to appear again now for a completely unknown entity. It's kind of scary.
I mean, all the talk around this is we're going to make this genre-defining game. We're going to be doing this. We're going to be doing that. We're going to be doing the other thing. On the same hand, you have Phil Spencer saying that they want award-winning games, in a multitude of genres. This is going to be genre-defining. I mean, Hi-Fi Rush, it created its own genre of rhythm-based action adventures. And it was critically acclaimed. I think it was the first game published by Microsoft that has been mentioned in the Game Awards as like this could be Game of the Year. Hi-Fi Rush is a really good game. It's a really good game.
Yeah.
And yeah, it deserved a sequel. There's so much you could have done with that franchise. The first one was all rock music. You could have done pop music. You could have done R&B. You could have done hip hop. You could have done so much with that series. It looked spectacular. It was a mid-budget game. You could put that out, one title maybe every 2 or 3 years, and they're gone. They're gone. In my opinion, I think Microsoft wanted Shinji Mikami, and he left. He left Tango maybe a year ago, and I think they went, what are we going to do with these guys?
Yeah.
Are we going to make Evil Within 3 without Shinji Mikami? Really? Probably not. Shinji Mikami, he's a massive, massive, massive name in gaming, and he's not there anymore. I thought his tweet was really odd when they closed down as well. He just like retweeted, I think it was IGN's, Tango Gameworks has been shut down by Microsoft, and his tweet was just sad. I mean, yeah, but it gets worse. It gets worse than that. So we've had all these layoffs, we've had all these game developers shut down, and we also have like divestitures. Now, there's been a lot of these. I've just picked the 3 biggest ones, and I'm putting biggest in inverted commas here. Obviously, the most famous one is Toys for Bob, who made the Crash Bandicoot trilogy. They remade the Spyro trilogy, and they made Crash Bandicoot 4 as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, they basically, I'm presuming Microsoft has given them, you can either go independent or we're shutting you, and they've paid out their contract from Microsoft to go independent. But then they announced a partnership with Microsoft in their next game, so maybe Spyro 4, who knows? Saber Interactive got sold off as well by Embracer, and then Gearbox got sold by Take-Two, but were bought by Embracer. I mean, make that make sense. I don't
There's a lot
understand that.
of internal sort of number crunching a lot there. I think it's a lot to kind of fluff numbers and make everything seem that it's not so bad really to go, but we'll trade everyone internally.
Yeah, it's a strange one.
Eventually.
I don't understand how with one hand you can close studios and send them off, and then in the next time go, oh, Gearbox, come on into the family. I mean, what sort of message is that sending to your staff? I don't get it. I don't get it. Surely Gearbox make Borderlands, so I don't know what the sort of how much of Borderlands they own, but I'm presuming Randy Pitchford owns Borderlands, right?
Well, it's like
It's not
Gearbox
gonna
2K. It's everyone's kind of under the same
I mean, it's
umbrella,
not.
really, are they?
I mean, you have loads of examples of that where Bungie created Halo, but Microsoft owned it, and then you had Epic Games made Gears of War, but Microsoft owns Gears of War, so Epic can't make a new Gears of War. Bungie can't make a new Halo because their publisher owns it. So, does Gearbox own Borderlands, or is it Take-Two's? That's my question.
Yeah.
So, have Embracer went, we can buy Gearbox, we can put out Borderlands 4, and then make some money back on it? I don't know. I don't know. But it's a wild message to be sent out that we're going to close X but buy Y, or we're going to spend a record-breaking amount of money, the largest entertainment merger of all time, but we're going to close 4 studios in order to sort of make ends meet. Whereas the maths ain't mathing on some of this for me personally.
Well, that's it. We sort of half touched on it last week when we did the showcases and the Summer Game Fest and everything, that there's no gap between AAAs that take 8 or 9 years to put a single title out, and then
Mm-hmm.
the other end of the spectrum is then you've got your indie titles, which you can put out maybe a couple a year,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's a very small team, like 2-3 people teams doing these games. This idea of this AA game is a bit dead.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of where all these like layoffs are coming, is what they're doing, is going, well, indies take care of themselves. Indies are this little churning GoFundMe kind of situation, whereas let's just dump all the driftwood, all the deadwood, and let's put it into making the next big franchise installment. Really, see, like GTA 6 has been in development for 11 years.
I don't think it's that long, because GTA 5 stopped. They started making Red Dead Redemption 2, which, if memory serves me, it was 2018, 2019, maybe. So I would say once that starts wrapping, getting close to the end, they would sort of split the team into two, and then they would start making GTA 6. So you're probably talking GTA 6 is what, 5 years in the making now, at least. It's not due out until 2024 or 2024,
26.
2025.
25,
Sorry.
so yes.
So yeah, so that'll be 6 or 7 years. Yeah, you're talking 6 or 7 years to make a AAA game these days. I mean, how many years ago was it? I think I saw on Twitter the other day. Was it 5 years from the reveal of Elder Scrolls 6?
It's been six years since that teaser came out, yeah. And we are no
And
closer. This is it.
that's it. There's nothing else. Fable has been in the last 3 Microsoft summer events. So that's at least 3 years. It's due to come out next year, I think.
We touched on this ever so slightly last week as well, even when they came out about the Prince of Persia remake. You said something about like 2,000 people were working on
3,000
that
people,
game.
yeah, have worked on it.
There's a lot of priority there, but it's not yielding any results really. And this will probably sit in. Maybe it's a financial thing. Maybe it's just like maybe it is riddled with problems. Maybe there is something like bigger scale of things, but they seem to be cutting away at these smaller studios to go, well, let's just remake something or get a second installment, or let's put so much money into this. And then there's all this talk about, like, you've got the quadruple A game that may never exist, but is always going to be in the conversation, I suppose.
That should never exist. Just speaking of that, a game that I totally forgot existed until Thursday when they released a trailer for it. Beyond Good and Evil 2.
What's
Like,
that?
Beyond
Never heard
Good
of
and
Beyond Good and
Evil
Evil.
was a GameCube. I think it was on PlayStation 2 and Xbox as well. But Beyond Good and Evil is like it was made by Double Fine, if memory serves me right. But it was basically a Zelda-like, where you played as these like sort of, not criminals, but like bounty hunter type, and you were just traveling the galaxy. But it was like very, very Zelda-y, where every mission was like a different sort of dungeon type thing. They announced a sequel to it, and I want to say they announced this sequel in 2016, maybe 2017, and it was just a trailer of Jade and the pig character on the side of the road. That's it. I mean, that was 2016. 2017, so you're talking 6 years ago now. They on Thursday announced a remake, a remaster of Beyond Good and Evil, and in the press release they said that there's new content, including, and this is their words, a nod to Beyond Good and Evil 2. I don't know if that's a joke, because it certainly sounds like one. Here's a game we announced 6 years ago that we've made no mention of ever since, and here there is an Easter egg in this game that will hint at what's going to happen in Beyond Good and Evil. I mean, it makes no sense. It makes no sense. And Beyond Good and Evil, even back in the PlayStation 2 era, wasn't a AAA game. It was AA. It wasn't
Yeah, so they've
massively
nearly like just
expensive.
cut this. Yeah, they've just cut this idea of a double A out and just went, well, triple A's have only existed now, so I've just actually had a quick Google of Beyond Good and Evil 2. In 2022, it broke the record held by Duke Nukem Forever for the longest development period for a AAA game at more than 15 years. So
So there we go.
you'd
It's never
wonder.
happening. It's never
Yeah.
happening. I don't know why it's never happening, but it's not happening. Uh, it's a random one, but yeah, Beyond Good and Evil remake looks really good. I'll be in that 100%.
To be fair, I started making a game in RPG Maker back on Windows XP, and I've never finished that. So technically, last nearly 20 years now.
Yeah, there we go.
Suck on
Someone
that. Beyond Good and
kick
Evil.
Guinness in the phone. But yes, but all this here is going on in the background of a games industry, right? Games industry last year made $184 billion. We've had loads and loads and loads of companies announce to their stocks, their boards, saying that they've made record profits. We've had record breaking acquisition, and games seemingly are making money hand over fist. So why are all these layoffs happening? All these studio closures? What's going on?
It's cost cutting and profit maximization, isn't it? At the end of the day, and I probably think that there is a lot of potential AI. Like they think, oh, it's the same thing with kind of a bit of a tangent here, like the SAG strikes.
Yep.
They basically all the extras are saying is like, no, they don't want to be paid for a single role for AI then to just pick up their likeness and just plonk them everywhere. I think it could be something that higher ups in some of these big major companies are just going, oh, why don't we just have AI make a game? Surely it can just be the same thing. Like that's probably it could be where we're going. Hopefully not, but it's not in the realm of understand possibility, I would say.
If we want to talk about AI and generative AI, that is certainly a huge, major factor across all technology sectors, especially gaming. If you are working in a tech company, you might hear a particular high up openly talk about you won't be doing the job you're doing in 2 years. And that's being said right now. Other people might say the Gen AI is a aiding tool to speed up efficiency, to improve the way things are done, and to not replace but readjust how the work is done. There are different outlooks of how that's going to play out, and unfortunately, it's developers who create this generative AI. It doesn't exist. It just doesn't appear randomly, and is maintained by itself. This is worked on, and with AI tools in games, that's the same, right? That still needs it. It doesn't just write me a game. Okay, that is going to be a mess. It's not going to build, function, work. It's not going to publish. But it is going to benefit the game industry. Oh, take it easy. I know it's a passionate topic, but it is something to partner with. One game that caused a lot of discussion that came out on Steam, I think was what was it, Pal World, right? Where the whole every animal was AI generated. But it just kicked up a lot of discussion because what was the AI using to create these monsters from? Because it doesn't just say
reference points and stuff. Yeah,
it's all ones and zeros, but it's using other art, it's using other information or something to read upon and then generate from that. So hence Nintendo got a bit of an interest in that because they all look like Pokemon. So it's about how it's used, but in terms of a business case, there's definitely and like not even executive level, there's management levels who are saying we don't need developers or as many, we can cut back. This is going to do half the job, if not all of it. Sweet.
And that's the future. Humans getting phased out one industry at a time. It's happened retail. It's going to happen as well. We're probably all be out of jobs in about 30 years because robots will be doing the job for us, or big computer substations will be
Can't
running
wait
cities.
till generative AI is doing High Scores, High Stakes season 10 for us. We just hit. I don't even think we'll even need to hit record. It'll just do it for us.
You know, we just set a schedule or something like that, or
Sherry
let the
still
AI.
finishes last.
Sherry had become. We create Sherry in AI for season 4. That's the way.
That's the way. That's how.
But
That's what's going to happen.
I do want to sort of. This has been a lot of doom and gloom in this one. I actually did have a little bit of a nice part of this whole thing, just in the light of all of the devs being sacked, all these big layoffs and everything like that. Hidetaka Miyazaki, if I mispronounced that, I do apologize. The director, CEO of FromSoft, did say, as long as the studio is my responsibility, FromSoft will not see any mass layoffs, won't see any sort of major staff turnovers, and it's kind of interesting because what Elden Ring came out 2022. Shadow of the Erd Tree just dropped Friday past. Essentially what they've done is they've churned out a full new game as, you know, secondary content for the main product, and it does show that, like, stand by the team that they have. You know, they pretty much a close knit network anyway. FromSoft, you know, aside from Bloodborne, really, you know, they haven't cut corners into making what, from what has reviewed, is a massively strong product in this DLC.
Yep.
Now I think it's like the highest rated DLC of all time at the minute. It's been out for,
it is,
at time of record, it's been out for 4 days.
yeah, it's the highest rated DLC of all time. I think it beat Witcher 3 Blood and Wine was the previous holder for it.
That's
But
right,
yeah,
yes.
but what you're saying there is, I think that's Japanese culture, isn't it? Of mutual respect and treating everyone the same. Because I remember after the disaster of the Wii U, before the Switch came out, I think it was Iwata was the CEO of Nintendo, and he announced, in between the announcement of the Switch and the phasing out of the Wii U, obviously Nintendo's profits were down because the Wii U was an absolute disaster, and he announced that he was taking a 50% pay cut in order to not have to lay off any staff. And towards the end of this, we'll talk about, you know, is anyone doing things correctly? Are there any companies out there doing things correctly? You will notice that there is a distinct Eastern majority of companies who are doing things correctly, who aren't laying off staff, who are making money, or who are going about things the correct way. But we'll get that when we get that. Spoiler alert: Nintendo's there. But let's see if we can think of some reasons why this is happening, and we'll do it in the next section. So yeah, so I have been researching this really heavily for the past week. Obviously, that's why we're recording it so late. But I've been reading a lot of stuff about why this is happening in the games industry, and everyone seems to have different ideas of why this is happening. Why are these companies here making combined 184 billion pounds per year, which was up from 2022? It was down from 2021, but it is projecting upwards ever so slightly. You're talking about 400 million pound, I think, was the difference between 2022 and 2023. And everyone seems to have different ideas, and they're blaming different things. One of the threads through every analyst that I have seen is COVID-19. So obviously COVID, what was that, 2020?
2020, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Some would
wasn't
say
it?
2019, tail end of given the name, but it hit us in the West in 2020.
It was globally 2020, wasn't it? So obviously when COVID hit, Western governments around the world decided that no one was allowed to leave their houses anymore. Businesses came to an absolute grind and halt. Everyone was getting these laptops. Everyone was being sent home to work from home. Obviously, people were spending a lot more time there. Workloads were reducing because there wasn't as much business out there because companies were sort of holding on to the money that they had in order to not sack staff, especially in the UK, where our government dragged their heels regarding sort of furlough payments. I know Australia was really quick on that. America was quicker than us. We seem to be like the last ones to pay companies to keep their staff, which is mental. But obviously, people are staying at home, which means they have a lot more free time to do things, but they're not allowed to leave their house. So what a lot of people did was they bought consoles. There was a lot of a resurgence, especially of older consoles. I know CEX in 2021 posted like it was their best ever year because they were selling PlayStation 2s, PlayStation 3s, etc., etc., etc. But all of a sudden, COVID-19, people were stuck in their house. They weren't allowed to go and socialize and see friends and see their family. So there's millions, all of a sudden, there's these millions and millions and millions of new players who were demanding games. And companies saw that and went, do you know what? Let's hire folk. And every single games company out there went, well, not every single one. Western, yes. Eastern, no. But Western developers went mad for hiring people, and it was just chaos. I mean, you saw Microsoft hired. I think Microsoft hired something like 4,000 new staff over the course of the pandemic. Sony round about the same. I think it was about 2,000. But every company, EA hired loads. Activision hired loads. Just all of a sudden, there was crazy. COVID is one I think could be at the root of this, to be honest, because there's a lot of like evidence to suggest that there was new players who were hungry for games, and one of the big ones is it's just looking at numbers. So if you look at games that released during the pandemic, and the big one I could think of, the biggest one I could think of was Animal Crossing: New Horizons on the Switch.
Oh yeah.
So Animal Crossing is a 20-year-old franchise at this stage. I think the first one released on the Nintendo 64. If not Nintendo 64, the first one I remember was on GameCube. And there's been 6 or 7 entries into that, including New Horizons. New Horizons sold 45 million copies. Okay. If you take every single sale of the previous entries into that franchise, New Horizons outsells them combined by 5 million copies.
It's crazy. I think it was one of those ones that came out and it was like, you could just do whatever you want. You're not bound by a story. You're not bound by really anything. And it had a huge online online network as well. So people were just going, come look at my farm. Come look at my farm.
Yep.
I think it was this like perfect, like, I think people played Animal Crossing as like this little escapism, or people just played Fortnite just to kill time, basically.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Animal Crossing, I think, is being called by a load of different people the right game at the right time. Obviously, it's social. It's social. 90% of that game is social interaction with other players. If you can't go see your family in real life and everyone's playing Animal Crossing, why not go visit your family in Animal Crossing? That's what people were doing. They were using it to see their friends and interact with their friends and their families and stuff like that. It was just the right game at the right time. It's unbelievable. I when I saw the sales figures for that game, I was like, I remember it going crazy. I think it released in April, which would have been just during our like
1 month
spring,
into lockdown.
yeah, our spring lockdown where people were just not allowed to leave. 45 million copies is crazy. It skyrockets Animal Crossing to one of the biggest selling game franchises of all time. That one entry, it's strange, but that's not the only thing that happened during COVID. Obviously, 2020, I think the release of PlayStation 4, Xbox Series consoles came out in November that year. But in that year alone, PC and console gaming grew by 50%, which is the biggest growth gaming has ever seen. And it's only
Yeah, it
shrinking
stands to
from them.
reason. Yeah. It's
But
a big plateau there, but
that's people buying consoles. It's people buying Switches to play Animal Crossing, apparently. What it is. I mean, the lockdown pushed the Switch from, I think it was 40 million units to it's now surpassed 115 million as of April. So it's the third best-selling console of all time, the Switch. But yeah, it's just one of those things. There's just so many little tales that COVID played this massive role into just this explosion of gaming.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
and there's
like
just
there's this big plateau, and then obviously when everything starts to normalize and stabilize, and then I think everyone goes, we've overdone this a little bit, and then there's a
yeah,
massive regression. They have to kind of rein it in a little bit to manage the fallout of, costs are gonna everything's gonna go back and inflate again, basically, as everything starts to normalize. So
yeah. I
it makes
mean,
perfect sense.
yeah, I mean, there's loads more you can point to during COVID. So obviously during COVID, industry shut down, especially in China, where most of our chips are made. There was the chip shortage. You might remember the PlayStation 5 was really hard to get for the first year and a half of its life. Xbox seemed to not have it to the same extent. I know that Valve had big issues with chips, Nvidia graphics cards.
Yeah.
Just every sort of aspect of gaming seemed to be hit by it. Um, with regards to people being hired, obviously they were hiring people flat out. But what I didn't know until I researched for this was obviously hiring people, you need somewhere for them to work. So a lot of these major publishing houses were making new development studios and they were looking for senior staff, but there's only so much senior staff to go around. And there wasn't enough for all these new studios that were popping up left, right, and center. So what that did was it created this bidding war for like really experienced people who can lead a team into making a product. And apparently wages went through the roof. And then all of a sudden COVID has stopped. The words went back to normal or normal in inverted commas. And as you say, Tom, these companies are going, oh dear, we've got too many people. We're paying them too much. And gaming shrank from COVID. I mean, they probably thought, during COVID,
They're on
50%,
on a boom, yeah.
we are selling more consoles than we ever have. We're selling more games than we ever have. This is going to last forever. But it was a false sort of growth of the industry. It wasn't real because once the world went back to normal, these people who didn't play games before COVID aren't going to play games after it, and that's what's happened. But is COVID the only? Is it the only reason for it? Or what?
It's definitely a starting point anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
It
I
is.
mean,
There's a couple of things I would say. The if you try to buy a PC in 2020, for example, the graphics cards were through the roof in price.
Mhm.
So the minimum treble the price. Part of that was down to cryptocurrency and crypto farming. Now,
Yep.
that really did tick off when people were locked down, and some people were starting to like, oh, I'll spend some money in this, and then if I get a graphics card, I can start to mine and things like this. And you had crypto farms going on, which were seizing all those sweet Nvidia cards and causing prices to rocket. Once that market particularly started to crash in 2021, 2022, you could start to buy PCs again like a regular human. They're still high. They haven't properly recovered or lowered. And I had another absolutely tremendous point. Please, lads, keep on talking and I'll try and remember it. Oh, yeah, it was what you said right at the start. Workloads reduced for people. Totally incorrect. I have never worked as hard as I did than during lockdown because my workload went through the roof and it was so much higher. But please carry on.
That's all right. I
It
think
is
I
what it is.
drank whiskey every day and played Witcher 3, but I think we had very different lockdowns.
I also worked quite hard. But I just thinking there's no distribution going on, things like that. There was industries that were absolutely hammered. There's industries that don't exist anymore because of COVID, effectively. But yes, I think COVID played a major role in these companies sort of overstretching themselves, if it makes sense, financially. Obviously, when things are good, you can afford all these new members of staff and you can afford these higher wages. But if those good times ever come to a stop, then things need to be done and course correction needs to be done. And I think that's what we're seeing now is a reduction of staff and costs to try to make the ends meet now that there's not all these new players. Personally, though, another thing I saw being blamed for this was ironically Fortnite, and I don't know. I think pegging it on
Tell
one
me
game
more.
is, I think pegging it on one game is a bit of a stretch. However, let's look at Fortnite as a genre, which is, of course, the service shooter or the service game, the game as a service. Um, so what we have, right, is we have a games developer. In this case, we'll use Fortnite as our example. All right, so we have a game that was released initially in early access in 2016, and then we saw H1Z1 in the same year release H1Z1 Just Survive, which was or Battle Royale, sorry, which was 100 players dropped into a server, last one standing. Fortnite saw that, thought we can do that better. Let's drop our save the world for a bit and let's just do a battle royale version of this. And Fortnite, I remember kids at the school I taught in, everyone was playing Fortnite. Fortnite exploded because of this battle royale mode. As a genre, games as a service are enormous. They are the biggest sector of gaming, and when I say sector, you're talking like 3 or 4 different games. Like, it is massive money, but there's not that many games that you can mention in it. So let's talk about the big ones. Fortnite. I've already said this at the start. 2023, 5.5 billion made. They are closing in on 10 billion since launch, which would put it up into the top 0.01% of games to make that sort of money. There's only a handful of games that have ever made that. Roblox, enormous. 2023, it made 2.7 billion, which was an increase on 2022 of about 25%. And then we have mobile gaming, the home of games as a service. So mobile gaming, are you ready for this? Mobile gaming is bigger than console gaming. It is bigger than console gaming and PC gaming combined. So last year, mobile gaming made $92.6 billion. All right. And the big games that contributed to that, well, one I've heard of, which is PUBG Mobile. Go figure. And Clash of Kings are your 2 biggest on mobile, and they contributed a lot to that. You're talking 20 odd billion to that 92.6. Games as a service is massive. So it is. They are really, really, really important as well. I think for those developers that have jumped on that and jumped on it successfully, so like, I don't know who makes Roblox, I'm just going to call them the Roblox company. And Epic, they saw an opportunity. They have seen in 10 years ago nearly now that console gaming, PC gaming plateaued. There's no growth in gaming, and there hasn't been since the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 era. So if you think back, how many consoles were sold in that era? 86 million PlayStation 3s, 85 million Xbox 360s, which is about 165 million consoles. All right. PlayStation 4, Xbox Series, or Xbox X, whatever it was called, I can't remember what they were called. 100 and something million PlayStation. I think it's 125 million PlayStation sold, 50 million Xboxes sold. So yeah, so games consoles since the Xbox 360 days the sales have never really grown. The same number of people are buying consoles every single generation. It hasn't went up, and it's not looking like it's going to go up either. So Epic and Roblox and all these companies who have jumped on the games as a service have made a very, very, very smart decision of, if we're not going to move games units, then let's just make money off the game. Just keep people hooked, and let's just keep them playing. So they do that by, you see it yourselves, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We're talking about cosmetics, we're talking about a whole heap of things, and we're talking about seasons of content. Like Fortnite do that FOMO thing of, for the next 2 weeks you can buy Wolverine or whatever it is, and then people like Sherry go out and buy them all. and you can just do that. You can just do that infinitely. It's so little cost to develop a new skin other
Yeah,
than
you're
the
making more
licensing.
money. You're making more money on that than like developing a new IP as such, or even like developing a new console, because all you have to do is, I'm gonna like really dumb this down, but I imagine if you just go PS4 to PS5, it's not a big graphical or coding jump.
Hmm.
Cardinal's rubbing his eyes here.
Oh, but
But
you're right. The
yeah,
staff required to do that, to come up with you've already got the service set up. It's going to be seasons. You just restart that service. Then you got new cosmetics. So you need like a designer way of coding that in. You you don't need a massive team to just add in. There's probably a engine or system they have already just to design that and implement it into the game. They don't. It's so much less effort.
Yeah, yeah, and it means every time you sell one, it's pure profit. It is just
Yeah.
pure profit margin, and it's staggering. But like obviously other companies have seen these companies do it. You've had Blizzard who have stepped into that with Overwatch, done really really well. Not as well as these games, obviously. And you've had companies like EA, who I don't know if you remember, but EA said that they're no longer going to be making single player games because they're just too expensive and it's too big a financial risk. I don't know if you remember, but I can't remember who
do you
their
remember them
CEO
saying
was.
that? No.
But they were like, gamers are very comfortable with talking about the game they just played, but moving on to the next one. Um, and EA wanted their games to be cooperative or have some multiplayer service attached to it to avoid this what they call fire and forget mentality of gamers. And they said that all their games are going to be cooperative or multiplayer packaged goods, and they said that single player 25-hour experiences are gone. I think he said that this model is finished, and then here they are,
But
their
that's an
last couple of
insight.
games.
Well, I'll not get into it but that's an insight into a mindset of a business owner, a publisher, a investor who's looking profit back and returns.
100%, 100%. I mean, it's probably absolutely spot on from a financial business perspective, but it annoyed people massively. They're like, "Well, I'm never buying an EA game again," and even EA have backtracked that. I mean, the last couple of years that they've had more single players than have had anything else. I mean, and they've been massive successes. I mean, you have the Jedi Outcast Jedi Survivor series, which is massive. So it is, but it's yeah, games as a service. I think have a lot to answer for when it comes to all these games companies cutting staff. I mean, you just have to look at the games as a service failures over the last couple of years. I mean, the big one is Marvel's Avengers, which was Square Enix, I think.
It was, yeah.
That was being made for 4 years. It was massively expensive. The licensing for that is crazy. I'm sure Disney aren't going to give them it for very cheap. It came out and was an absolute disaster. I think you've had loads and loads of like Nickelodeon fighting games with all the Nickelodeon characters. You've had multiverses come out and then get pulled from the shelf when they come out again. There's just loads and loads. I mean, the listeners will be able to spite off about a million more games as a service that have come and gone. There's literally hundreds of them, hundreds, where it's just people trying to jump on it. But if you only have so many gamers, and a lot of them gamers are clearly playing Fortnite and Roblox and things like that, they're not going to just drop a game that they've spent thousands of pounds on to go play Marvel's Avengers because they're playing
Exactly.
Fortnite and they like Fortnite and they have Peter Griffin's skins and Wolverine skins in Fortnite. Do you know what I mean? It's a funny one. I think games as a service has a lot to do with what we're seeing now. A lot of companies took massive risks in creating their own, and they've failed. And what do you do if you spent 2, 3, 400 million on a game that is dead in 3 months? That's a financial hit. You just can't. No company in the world could take that, and they're not, and they're just going, okay, well, that game's dead. We're stopping development on everything going forward, and we've no room for you guys anymore. Sorry.
Yeah, it's cutthroat at that rate. Then really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. And then the most recent, I think, cause of this
Oh,
is, of course, they often talked about war in Ukraine. So war in Ukraine, I don't think many people seen it coming. Obviously, there's been a war between those two, like sort of cold war between those two for about a decade now. And then 2022, Russia has invaded Ukraine,
Yeah.
and it spiraled the global economy into absolute chaos. I mean, absolute chaos. I mean, you've had what's increased recently in the last couple of years. Your cost of living has increased. Inflation went through the roof, and global banks had to start working together to try to sort of tow it back in. And it's only now has inflation dropped back down to its normal sort of levels, which is what 2.5 years after that primary spike. Mortgages went out of control, rents went out of control, manufacturing costs have went through the roof, distribution has went through the roof because of the cost of fuel. And then, of course, if all these prices are going up and you have tech companies who need all these things, then the cost of business is going to go through the roof, and it has. As you said at the start of this, Tom, all these games companies have hired all these people during COVID when things were good, and now all of a sudden, in the preceding years after that, things haven't been good. They've been, quite frankly, it's the worst economy we've ever seen, and this is our third global recession in our lifetimes.
Aye, absolutely. No, that's it. No,
Is
I
it-
mean
is it the
we sort of
third?
knew. What
I remember
2008?
2008, 2009, but when was the?
Early 90s, just after Thatcher. After Thatcher, before New Labour.
Oh, you're
I
that
was a
old.
child
Gotcha.
then. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so the war in Ukraine has caused chaos. Obviously, they're paying way more staff than they need, way more money than they are probably earning. And then all of a sudden, all these costs are now going through the roof, and the numbers they just couldn't make them meet. We've seen games companies try to avoid what they're doing now. We saw the price of the PlayStation 5 go up. We've seen the price of the Xbox Series consoles go up. Cardinal, you said about PC hardware went through the roof as well, and it's still really, really high. I mean, a PC you could have bought 5 or 10 years ago for £600 is now costing you the guts of 1,500. Everything's gone through the roof. Even games themselves. What, £70 now is your RRP on
it's
a
your
on a game now on
standard. Yeah. I
PlayStation?
still remember
Yeah.
when it was 39.99 was the standard, and it was for the longest time. And then
Mhm.
just maybe it's the digital market now. Maybe it's inflation. Maybe it's a mix of the both. But £70 is now your base. I think
Yeah.
even for a physical copy, if you're going major retailers that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember my mum and dad buying me Mortal Kombat and the Mega Drive for £75 back in the day. But games have never went up. I mean, you're talking Mortal Kombat came out what, 1993,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
games were cheaper in 2007 than were in 93, which makes no sense. I think £70 fair, but now obviously you have games companies trying to charge out 200, for the game. I think I saw a game recently. I can't remember what it was, but the standard with all the bonuses was going to cost you £150
I
just
saw
for the
that like quite
standard
recently
game.
for like the new Assassin's Creed, the new I think Metal Gear Solid Delta and stuff as well. I think even Dragon Ball Spark and Zero as well. Their collector's editions, or like not even their like ultimate editions, like their middle tier one, is
Mhm.
3 figures. You're talking 100, £120.
I mean, it's not uncommon now, yeah, to pay
Uh, but, but
£109.
but like as a middle tier like
Mhm.
edition is crazy. Like you'd expect that if you're getting like the collector's ultimate edition with like figures and playing cards or whatever it is now, but like that's just going to be, and the way it's sort of being scaled back now is it's going to be the game, digital art and a digital soundtrack, uh,
Yeah.
a model if you're lucky.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest here, though. Those special editions were never worth the money. They were just giving you that, and it was I mean, the one that always sticks out in my head, I think it was Fallout 4, where they were giving away the duffel bag, but it was a plastic nylon bag when it came. People kicked off. Yeah, I mean, games companies have been trying to do this for years and trying to sort of hide the cost of the game behind, oh, look, but you get these coins or whatever it might be. Um, but yeah, I mean, the price of games, in my opinion, because I'm old enough to remember Street Fighter 2 on the Sega Mega Drive in 1993 cost £75. Mortal Kombat cost £70. I remember some games costing 80 in some places. And it never registered with me when I was paying $39.99 for Call of Duty Modern Warfare that I was paying less money than what my mom and dad spent on Mortal
Yeah.
Kombat or Street Fighter 2. It seems mental to me. But yeah, so all of a sudden, there's all this money that's not in the games industry anymore because a lot of players have left it because of COVID and they were never gamers anyway. Um, to me, and I think I said this last week, Tom, in the last side quest, that gaming is going to go one of two ways. It's either going to crash or they're going to have to make changes to how things are done in order to make this a sustainable industry. Because right now, it is not sustainable. There's no way you can sack 11, 12,000 people every year and have an industry, because what people do is burn out and they'll just leave. And
Yeah,
they'll go
no,
work
absolutely.
for
Like you
a
see it in the
software
movie
giant.
industry, and it's gonna follow suit, I think, into the gaming in some capacity as well. Like, I mean, you're seeing just as we sort of touched on the SAG stuff as well, even like the VFX artists and stuff who were all kicking
Mhm.
off because they're working like 18, 19-hour days, like because of all the cuts, and what they want to do is the big companies want to do it for the cheapest way possible. So you're sacrificing quality for quantity, for time spent on it, really. So
Yeah.
the game industry's gonna go the same way, really. It'll lay off people and expect everyone else to do more, and it's just not gonna be possible, really.
No. 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 Any other reasons you guys can think of for why what's happening is happening? That's my three.
No, I
You,
think
you,
I think you've pretty much hit the nail on the head there. Three big sort of world changing events, really, in
Yeah.
in that respect.
Yeah.
it's certainly a nuanced conversation. You can touch on these topics. There'll be many other factors. Obviously, in each case, I'm sure there's different decisions made. One thing that, or a couple of things that strike me are it's tech wide as well. Yeah, there was 250,000 layoffs last year. There's been another 100,000 to date this year, um, and I find I've seen a lot of it is, and it may be touched on what you talked about in 2020 with the hiring. Investors own a lot of these companies, or own or invest in these development companies, publishing companies, funds fund those investments, and they purely are seeking profits. You talk about cutting corners and people crunching and working over hours with less people. That's happening everywhere to get the most out of whatever they can.
Mhm.
But I I don't want to say capitalism's the problem, because that sounds like you'd be getting political or something. But I want to call one example of Paradox Interactive just this week or last week. They sacked off a whole studio in California when they were about to release a game. It was 2 weeks from launch. Okay. And it was supposed to be a new alternative to The Sims. It was a life sim, kind of brand new IP. Okay. And they were 2 weeks away. The studio, or the head of that studio, spoke up today to say they tried everything. They said, we'll go indie, we'll look for other sellers, just let us release the game as it is now. And for whatever reason, Paradox said no to all of those things and just publicly announced that it was closed, and that they were all let go. So
It's
what,
crazy,
you know,
crazy.
whereas you could have said maybe just release that game as it was, you know, or patched it or send it in alpha, you know, like
Yeah.
games do. But there's a decision behind that where it's no, they gotta go. But why that
It's
is, I mean, various reasons, I'm sure.
yeah. Yeah, obviously the crunch numbers went, this is not going to sell enough to justify the server costs or whatever it might be.
Mad.
There's a load of
Madness,
costs, there
like.
are. Um,
Which have
but
all got
yeah,
higher because of the reasons you've mentioned as well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a ton of reasons, as you say. There's way more than what I've talked about, and every studio's different, every publisher's different, and their costs and costings and profit margins. How many times in the last 2 or 3 years have you heard X game did not meet financial expectations? And it's just like,
Suicide
well,
Squad.
what?
That's the main example there. It's like they were like, "Yep, that game was not what we expected it to be."
But yeah, but they never
But
tell
they
you what they
refused to.
expected.
Yeah, they never
What?
outright say this is what we expected. They just go, "This fell short of what we wanted."
Hmm. I think the last Tomb Raider game, Square Enix said the same about the last Tomb Raider game, and we haven't seen one since.
Oof.
About Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and we haven't seen one since. And it was all right. It was quite a good game, but
Yeah.
here it is what it is. So yeah, that is a lot of what's happened and what is happening. I think what we should talk about is what is next for the games industry. We sort of touched on a lot of stuff, so we'll talk through that, but just after this. All right, so what is next? What is next? How do we fix this? How do we get studio heads in the high scores, high stakes studio? I go, this is how you fix it, boys. How do we fix it? Anyone any ideas?
Uh, well, I mean, that's a loaded question, isn't it?
Yep.
I mean, we sort of have talked about it in like little bits and breaks and stuff there. It was very much of the, what the guys from Software had said. It's like as long as the studio is in the hands of people who care about it, there will not be like sort of mass layoffs, and the guys who want to work on the projects will continue to work on that project. And I think we did touch on it earlier. It's very much an Eastern mentality. It's relationships built on sort of mutual respect. I think there's something slightly missing in our side of the world on how
Mm-hmm.
a product is to be delivered and how a business really is to be ran. So my thoughts would always be to kind of take influence from that. I mean, we take influence from that with the actual games and the titles and the stuff in the games. Maybe the the business models need to sort of be replicated, I think, as well.
Yeah. I mean, yes. Yeah, there is a whole heap of stuff. I think. So there is. One thing I will say is every gaming analyst is saying that this is to continue until 2025 of studios being closed or divested out of the family, so to speak, and layoffs to continue. I mean, over the week there, we've seen more and more and more. I think Embracer Group's closing more um, as well. There's just so much stuff, but I think the big issue is to go back to Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. I think if your pipeline for making a game involves announcing it 3 years ago now for Prince of Persia, I think it was, and then building a game that has to be either passed on to another development team because the first team can't do it, or you're pulling in other teams to sort of help out with that. I think if you've got to the point in game development where a game that hasn't been released has been worked on by 3,000 people, then the issue is bigger than the game may not be that good. I think the issue is with your systems in place. If your system is allowing a game to be dreadful or not be worthy of showing it in a game show after 3,000 people have worked on, then either your systems are wrong or your staff's wrong. I mean, Prince of Persia: Sands of Time remake hasn't released. We haven't seen anything since the logo was revealed. They talked about it this Summer Games Fest, saying that it was still on the cards, but they were not going to be talking about it at this time. Then we have Beyond Good and Evil 2. If that's your pipeline, then it's also unsustainable. You can't have 3,000
Yeah.
people work on every game. I mean, a remake should be easy. Your groundwork's done. You're just taking what's already there, and you're. I know it's not a simple like highlight, copy, click it into a new engine. I know it's not that, but all the groundwork's done. The physics are there. Everything is there. Just replicate it in a new engine and make it better. Um, that's a big problem, I think, and that is very much a Western developer problem because all we hear about Arcane is, oh, Arcane Austin's working on this, but the other Arcane teams from around the globe are working on it with them. You're thinking, surely they're capable of it themselves. I think beyond that, marquee game development has to change as a whole. I don't think it's feasible for any company in the planet to not produce something for 6
In
years
the interim
and
and stuff.
still exist. I mean, games companies exist, they make games, they sell the games, that's where they make their money, and that's how they justify their existence. But how do you justify your existence if you're making a game for 6 years and it's not on the shelf? Where's the money coming from? Because right now, all you are to your owner is a money pit. They're putting money in and getting nothing back in return for it.
Yeah,
You
no, I
know,
get you there. Absolutely.
there's only so much your bosses are gonna back you up. I mean, like, when was the last game Naughty Dog released? Like, new game, Last of Us Part 2 in 2020.
Part 2 would have been, yeah. Then they did say as well that Part 3 won't be happening anytime soon. They want to work on other bits. They want to work on not a new IP, but they want to work on some new title or other titles and stuff like that. And then they basically just went and they were also laying off a whole heap of staff
Mhm.
as well.
Mhm.
So are they gonna sort of fall into this? Well, we're just gonna, or Naughty Dog just gonna be a Last of Us machine then? Who knew? Like, is this sort of where we're
But that's
going
what they
then?
said, is that we don't want to be known as the Last of Us studio, but you know, that's all they've released since The Last of Us Part 1 in 2013. That literally they haven't released a game that, well, apart from Uncharted 4. You know, it is what it is. But it's got to the point now where if you're making a game for 6 years, when that comes out, it has to win.
Has to
Like,
be good, yeah.
there's zero room for error on anything. If you're spending 6 years and making a game and it's not a massive hit, you're being closed. You're being closed. And I think that's completely unsustainable. You can't do that. That's why games have moved away from this experimental sort of thing. That's why indie games, I think, have had a resurgence, because they're filling a void for gamers where we don't want to play. Well, we do want to play The Last of Us Part 3, but we don't need every game from every developer trying to emulate The Last of Us before The Last of Us Part 3 comes out, if that makes sense. Like, games have become really. I remember even the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era, there was a lot of games that were not like anything else. I mean, I couldn't imagine BioShock being made in 2024 if it wasn't already made in 2007. That makes sense. Like, there's no way that's being greenlit. What do you mean? It's a first-person shooter, but it's not a first-person shooter, and you have magic powers? No, that's not being done. I mean, look at that EA game from last year's was Immortals of Avium.
Oh yeah, same thing, same principle, but
Came
just in a
out,
different
no one
setting.
cared. Came
Yeah,
out, nobody
exactly.
cared. So yeah, I think the way the games are being made is completely unsustainable, and if they don't change that, then it's game over. I think it's really is. The only other way I can see of combating it, if it is got to the point where this is the only way games can be made, then, and you mentioned this last week, Tom, then the concept of a console exclusive is dead. They can't exist anymore. If you've only got 160, 170 million people to sell games to, then you have to sell it to everyone.
Yeah,
Microsoft, to their
absolutely.
credit, are so far ahead of that than everyone else. It is frightening. If there's one company best placed to survive what's currently going on, it's Microsoft. Ironically enough, the least successful, the console makers, is the game developer best poised to survive what's going on at the minute, because they are selling their games everywhere. Pretty much day one PC and Xbox, and a couple of years later it'll appear on PlayStation and Nintendo Switch.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
then the
smart.
cycle begins again, and they're profitable forever, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it's just self-fulfilling prophet. What else? What else can you do? Remake, remasters, fill the void. That's what Naughty Dog are doing at the minute. I
Yeah.
mean, what the last original game they released, Last of Us Part 2. Last of Us Part 2 last year got a PlayStation 5 patch, it cost a tenner, but you're still, it's money coming in for very little work. For
I
very little
just
work.
despair because I see a future of a recurring cost to effectively pay a license to play a game.
Yep.
And that's how you constantly deliver money to the return investor rather than maybe you do continue to spend 6 to 8 years putting out your next game, but in the meantime you're paying $5 a month to be a part of that service or something, or
Yeah.
$8.99 if you want to be playing Final Fantasy 14 online, like some nerds might do.
Yeah. Do you remember, just speaking of that, EA had the thing called Project $5. Do you remember this?
Oh,
Where
that sounds
every
like such an EA thing.
It is. So that was what it was called internally. It was never called that in public, obviously. It was called online keys. Do you remember if you bought an EA game, you would have a code inside the front cover, and that was a one-time use to allow you to play the online functions or to connect it to the servers.
Yes, yes, yes.
And if you bought it secondhand, then you had to pay $5 in order to play your game. Yeah, yeah, I can see that happening again. It makes sense. I mean, if it is a one-off, £5. I mean, what £5 barely buys you a loaf of bread and 2 liters of milk these days? Let's be honest. Such as inflation.
Sure. No, it's kind of mad and chaos, and everyone's gonna sort of make up their own rules at the minute now. But the thing is, like, the games aren't exactly all misses either. We are still getting, like, yes, you are waiting to get your big next AAA title, but the return on those big AAA titles for the most part is pretty good as well. I think I know that the next big one that we're waiting for the last long turnaround is going to be GTA, and I know for a fact that the money spent on GTA, the money developing GTA, they'll make that back in pre-orders alone, probably.
I mean, yes. I mean, I think, was it last year? Take-Two said that 2024 is going to be a record year for them. So I would dare say Grand Theft Auto's penciled in March, and it'll become the best-selling game of all time in about 2 weeks, because everyone will buy it. Everyone will buy
The
it.
anticipation on it alone, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
And that sort of leaves us then, with that. You've mentioned the sort of, and we talked about it last week as well, the lack of AA games, that little, do you remember back in the day, and I mean Xbox 360 days, where you got like Resident Evil 4, for example, and then you also got like a smaller game, sort of the same sort of style, like Dark Sector, or you got like Vanquish. Do you remember Vanquish?
I remember
Made
that.
by Platinum
Do you
Games.
remember Vanquished, actually?
Yeah. Well, Vanquish came out like 6 or 7 months after Bayonetta came out, made by the same company, because what they did was they split their team into two. You make one game, they make another game, and they're smaller budget, there's quicker turnaround time, and we'll make double the money off of the workforce. You can't do that anymore, just because of the way games are now. They're far too big, far too expensive. Gamers expect everything. And if they don't get everything they expected, then it's an absolute disaster, and it's a 6 out of 10 worst game ever. You can't split teams anymore. I know Naughty Dog apparently has a team A and a team B, but I Team B hasn't made anything since the Lost Legacy Uncharted. And can you do that anymore? Can you split? Can you split Naughty Dog or another big
Not when there's a
AAA games
demand or
developer?
a want for, like, in Naughty Dog's case, a Last of Us Part 3. That's going to be what everyone's going to want or aspire for. So no, I think to go, let's make a game in the interim, isn't on their radar at all.
I don't think it's
sadly.
possible. I don't think it's possible. I mean, they seem to be. It's an arms race, isn't it, between Sony and Microsoft? Who can get the true 4K gaming first? Do we need that? Do we need games to look better than what they look like today? I don't think so. I think games look incredible today. I don't need more graphics. I would like more like mid-tier games to get me through to the next big release from Naughty Dog. If Naughty Dog had a second team and they made like an 8-hour game like the Uncharted Lost Legacy, whatever, it was 40 quid. I would buy that instantly. 40 quid for
Yeah,
me for a game
absolutely.
is an instant buy. But yeah, but all I see happening here is because Microsoft have warned about it, Sony have warned about it, even Valve have warned about it. Is just the spiraling costs, and they all say it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it will eventually hit a point where there's no possible way you can make money on a game, and then the whole industry just comes crashing down upon itself. It's the opposite problem that happened in America in the 80s, where there was too many low quality games, and that's what caused the American console crash in the 80s. There was too many low quality games. Gamers lost trust and faith in the companies and stopped buying, and the whole industry just came down. It's the exact opposite, where there's so many high quality games. This sounds like a big moaning fest, but the reason I'm worried about this is because the last few years have been amazing for games. I don't think we've ever had it better for sheer quality of games, and you just want to see that continue. But
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, but it is just looking like it might, unless some big changes come in or some regulatory body comes in and says you cannot ask your staff to work 70 hours a week for no overtime just to get a game out the door. I just don't think it can happen. And then you look at companies that are doing it correctly. So I've highlighted 2 companies here in my notes. The first one, you know who I'm going to say. We've got this far in the episode and we haven't mentioned them yet. It is Capcom. It is Capcom. Capcom and Nintendo, I think, are the 2 that every games developer across the planet should be looking at and saying, this is the model. This is what we all should be doing. So what do they do then, and why are they successful? So both Nintendo and Capcom had record-breaking like earnings last year. It was their best year ever for both companies. And you look at the things they're doing. They've done everything we've mentioned. So both of those have a range of like high quality, so AAA games, AA games, and single A games. They release them all. I mean, you just look at what's on offer from all those games companies. I mean, they meet every demographic. You know, both of them do remakes and remasters. I would argue there's no 2 better companies on the planet for re-releasing their old games than Capcom and Nintendo.
Yeah,
they get ripped and raked over the coals for doing it, but they only do it because they know we're going to buy it. I've lost count the amount of times I've bought Street Fighter 2. I've literally bought it on every games console I have ever owned, and I will buy it on a PlayStation 6 if they release it on the PlayStation 6. They only do it because we buy it, and it makes them money, and it is such an easy thing to do. Both of those companies hit every demographic. Nintendo, obviously, famously, you know, they kids games, family games, more adult games. Capcom are the same. You know, Capcom have a load of like child friendly games. You know, they've done that the Disney Morning Club, whatever it's called. They've done Mega Man, they've done Castlevania, the whole heap. Then they have Resident Evil, and then they have Street Fighter 6, Nintendo, obviously Mario Kart, Animal Crossing, the whole heap, Metroid Prime. They just meet every single. They haven't picked what I want 18 to 35-year-old males. Everyone can play games, so let's sell to everyone, and it works. It works. And what I like both about Konami and Nintendo is that they're not afraid to try new things. I mean, this year alone, Nintendo have had a Princess Peach game that was like a dress up sort of action platformer for a younger age group.
It was very, very well received as well.
Yep. I mean, it's a Nintendo; they're always well received. But then I think just the other day they announced a Zelda game where you control Zelda,
Yeah, it looks great. To be fair,
and it looks
it's
ama-
another demographic hit, and it's fans of the franchise and beyond. Really, they're just tapping into all these markets as well.
Yep, and they release these games that have never had like a massive global sort of. They're never breaking sales records like Kirby, but they know that there's fans, and they know that they can make a game for Kirby, keep it cheap, sell it, make a fortune on it, and that's what Nintendo do. Capcom are the same. I mean, I think I talked about it last week. That Kanitsugami Path of the
Mhm.
Goddess game looks unlike anything I've ever seen. It's clearly mid-budget, but it's the first time in years outside of Nintendo I've seen a publisher take a risk with a game, because I think that is a massive risk for Capcom to do. It's not going to sell 20, 30 million copies. It's probably not even going to sell 2 or 3 million copies, but it will sell to people and they'll make some money on it because it hasn't cost them the sun and the moon to make it. And they've done it relatively quick. I think it was 3 years. But yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, Nintendo also have the hardware side as well to fall back on. And what I like about Nintendo is they don't try to keep up with Sony or Xbox. I mean, they did. I think the last time they tried to keep up with par of the console was the GameCube, and it burnt them. And they brought out the Wii, which was just a GameCube in a different box, effectively
Yeah.
for power, and it sold. And the Switch is what 110, 112 million sold, and it is powered by an ARM processor. I mean, the processor in an iPhone 13 is more powerful than the one in the Switch.
But they know it
That's the
works.
way.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it. Do you need to spend 500-600 million pound on making a Mario game? No. Do you need to spend 500 or 600 million pound making an Uncharted? No. And that's the point. That's the point. Nintendo are proving you can have a hugely successful business without spending 7 years making one game and hoping, and it is hope, that it is successful. Where Nintendo can release games that they know have a smaller sort of audience. I mean, all you see on the internet is, oh, Metroid Prime 4. Where's Metroid Prime 4? Metroid has never been a mega success for Nintendo. Never. It's always been a critical success, but it's never been a financial one for them. But they still make them because they know there's people there, and it keeps those people on their platform because they'll come back for Metroid. And at the very least, if you're a big Metroid fan, you're going to buy a Switch to play
Exactly.
Prime. And it's smart. Whereas Sony, how many times have we went, give us this game? Like, all you see over the internet is, where's the Ape Escape? If that was Nintendo, there'd be an Ape Escape game. Maybe not every year or every 5 years, but once every 10 years, you'd get an Ape Escape game because they know there's fans of that, and they
You
know
get a
that
fan
fan will
service of
buy
it.
that.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's interesting to see how we're going to go. I think Astrobot is a really interesting experiment from Sony, because I think this is their attempt to saying, can a lower budget game make us money? That's what I think
70
is
quid, you
happening.
would bloody hell hope so.
Yeah. And Microsoft are prime for it as well. I don't understand why Microsoft don't do it as well. Microsoft are prime for it. Game Pass is perfect for lower budget titles to be released on. And just treat it like, look at Netflix. Netflix don't make every movie on that, whereas Xbox are expected to make every game on their service. So rather than make a movie every month, why not make a TV show? Why not make a lower budget game?
Yeah, absolutely.
So Nintendo are going to save us again from another game crash, is my takeaway from all this.
What a
And
summary.
Capcom. But yeah,
What
unless you have
a hot
anything
take.
else to add. That's what I think.
No, I think we've. I don't know. It feels like a bit of a bummer this episode. Like I feel as
It
if we need
is.
something to jazz it up now.
I think there's
bring it
another
home.
Cassie. I think we're going to see absolute mad things. One thing about indie devs don't have it so easy. You have an EA director took over Unity, which a lot of developers use, and then started to implement a fee, which was
Yep.
a free
I
service.
did see that. Yeah.
And then there was a big backlash, and then they adjusted it to, if your game sells 100,000 copies or makes 1 million, then we'll introduce the fee. And it was a fee based on every time the game was downloaded.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do they even track? Like, so if you download the same game you own 3 times in a year, or uninstall it, uninstall it, you're the developers charged for that. Insane. But with Gen AI, I think there's going to be a ballistic mess out there, and I worry about you mentioning the 80s of low quality, tons of low quality stuff. I'm sure it won't be the same, touch wood, but I just think you'll have to cipher through a lot of muck to find the gems.
Yeah, yeah,
Hopefully
and that's
not.
it. That's it. I mean, look at the Wii. The Wii was mad for shovelware. How many fairground games were there on Wii? Too many. One was too many, but we had about 30 of them. But yeah, I think there's a lot to celebrate in gaming, and the big one is the
Yes,
sheer
sir.
quality of games and the sheer number of games. I mean, seemingly every week this year, there's been a game I went, I want to play that, but I don't have enough time nor money for all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
We need listeners to talk to us and tell us
Yeah,
exactly what needs to be done to save the games industry.
yeah.
Question of the
What
week.
what can save gaming? So leave your answer down below this podcast if you're listening on Spotify, or get to highscoreshighstakes.com to get to our anchor page and answer it there. What can be done to save gaming before it folds upon itself? But yes, well, that being said, shall we get to the wrap up section, gentlemen?
I think so. Absolutely.
Go. And that is it, gentlemen. Another episode all wrapped up. A downer, a Debbie downer this week. We've ruined everyone's Monday. They've had to go to work, and now they've listened to this. They're expecting banter, and they've got nothing but depressing stats and figures and praise for Nintendo on a PlayStation podcast. What's that about? What's
What a
this
world we
about?
live in.
It's upside down. It's upside down. So let's just blast out what we need to blast right here. So if you want to find us anywhere else on the internet, go to highscoreshighstakes.com and click the links that are on top there. Make sure you click on YouTube, and make sure if you go to YouTube, make sure you click that subscribe button as well. Let's do that. And the wee bell notification, is that what we call it these days, Cardinal?
Ding
Wee
ding.
bell. Wee
Absolutely. Ring it.
notification bell. Give it a wee ding. Go ahead.
Ding dong on my bell.
Yeah, so question of the week is going to be about, what was it? What can be done to save gaming? What would you do to save gaming from Full Upon itself? And poll of the week will, I don't know what the poll of the week's going to be, but it will be put up after we edited this. To be honest.
It'll be something cool.
It would be something funny, so it will. But yeah, with all that being said, then I think we've come to the end, which means I only have one more thing to say, and that is, I've been Mr. Luvva Luvva. This has been High Scores, High Stakes. Thanks for watching. See you Monday. Love you all. Bye.